Na mipaka ya IEBC imetoa taarifa kuhusu maandalizi ya chaguzi ndogo zinazotarajiwa pamoja na mchakato wa maandalizi ya uchaguzi mkuu wa mwaka 2027. Baadhi ya maandalizi hayo ni zoezi la kutathmini mipaka. Hebu kwa sasa tuvuke moja kwa moja tuweze kusikiliza ni kipi ambacho kinajiri kwa sasa.
Geographical realities. The Constitution therefore obligates the Commission to periodically review electoral boundaries to promote equitable representation and to prevent voter dilution. It is in that regard that the Commission is mandated to undertake these periodic reviews and delimitation of electoral boundaries in order to align population and, of course, the principles of representation in a democracy such as ours. Following the conclusion of the first boundaries review in 2012, the Commission subsequently developed the Boundaries Review Operations Plan 2019 to 2014 that outlined the methodology, timelines, data requirements, and public participation framework to guide the second review cycle. Consequently, significant preparatory work has been undertaken since 2019 to date. And this includes, of course, developing the strategy for the boundary review. As you know, it's a very complex issue. Undertaking comprehensive situational analysis, pilot studies, acquisition of GIS and geolocation systems, training and capacity development of IEBC in order to undertake this complex and comprehensive exercise. However, despite the steps taken by the previous Commission towards undertaking comprehensive electoral boundary reviews, the process encountered serious constraints, which I believe you are aware of some of them. These constraints materially affected the pace and the timely completion of the boundary delimitation exercise. And as you are aware, we have already exceeded the constitutional timelines, which requires us to undertake the boundary delimitation between 8 to 12 years. So the last review was to be completed by March 2024, and those timelines have since passed. So we have outlined some of the constraints that have affected the boundary review process, and that's where we are. Absence of commissioners, as you are aware, after the previous commission left office in 2023 January, the IEBC remained without commissioners from that moment up to 11th July 2025, when these new commissioners assumed office, which is in the delimitation of boundaries, with the legitimate expectation that the number of constituencies will be increased. Since we assumed office, we have received petitions and presentations to the Commission, where we have our politicians and citizens requesting if their constituencies and wards could be split to take into account, of course, concerns such as the increase in populations, and of course other means, including the geographical factors and means of communication. While we take note of these demands and legitimate expectations from Kenyans, we, however, wish to inform the public and Kenyans in general that the Constitution under Article 89(1) places a cap on the number of constituencies. Currently, Kenya has 290 constituencies, And that number, the commission, even if we were to conclude this boundary review ahead of the 2027 general election, and I say if, we cannot increase these constituencies beyond the 290. Neither can we reduce them to below 290, because it's the Constitution that capped them, that placed them at 290, nothing more, nothing less. So we would like to inform Kenyans that what any boundary review process will look at is reviewing the names of those constituencies and the boundaries. We can change the boundaries to ensure a constituency with a large number can accommodate, with a smaller number, can accommodate some populations from that constituency which carries more populations. But we cannot change the number of constituencies. For wards, yes, there is a contradiction currently. We have the Constitution which gives the Commission the mandate to determine the number of wards, to determine their names, and of course their boundaries. And it has not placed any cap. But the County Government Act has capped wards at 1,450. So again, there is the conflict between the County Governments Act and the Constitution of Kenya. So that's an issue that we have flagged, and we hope that Parliament will address that issue by amending the relevant law so that then it removes that contradiction in the law. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are aware, of course, Kenyans have been waiting for this decision. It's a weighty one. And we in this new commission have endeavored to apply our minds. We have endeavored to look at all the factors, including what caused the delays, including the timelines we have to deal with, including the litigation that is impacting our work. And we've made what we believe is the right decision, and that decision does not in itself stop the delimitation process. We are continuing. There's a lot of work that Kenyans need to understand, and that work requires adequate preparation, early preparation. We need data, we need the tools, we need the training, we need the capacity, and we are proceeding with those processes that that are not affected by litigation, and that we hope in time we should be able to conclude this process accordingly and guided by the law. I thank you very much.
Just a question. My name is from Citizen TV. In regards to the limited boundaries, what if someone goes to court post 2027 general election and saying that this process ought to have gone hand in hand with the electoral process and it has not been achieved by the commission? Is that ground enough for election petition?
Thank you very much for that question. I think even currently, as of last year, I think towards the final quarter of the year, there is a case that has been filed in court. It's active. Again, asking the courts to look at that, the issues around boundary delimitation and whether they can affect the general election. So that's an active matter that I don't want to delve into the facts. But yes, I know the concern is, yes, we needed to have concluded the boundary delimitation ahead of the general election. But then, of course, I've explained the factors that led to where we are now, which, of course, we need to face as a nation, and that we have to weigh whether we stop everything else because the boundary delimitation, the timelines, and the constraints we have explained, or whether we should plan with the best case scenario, which is to continue doing the many activities By the way, boundary delimitation is not something you just wake up and delimit. It is a complex process. It requires a lot of GIS mapping. It requires a lot of, boundaries are very emotive. They require us to engage with the public. They will require us to have stakeholder participation at the ward level, at the county level, at the constituency level, at the national level. And along the process, if you look at in our presser, which we'll share with you the final copy later, we have explained the various phases and the likely risks that we are likely to face. For example, even if we publish a preliminary report and somebody challenges it in court, that will take time again before the courts determine. And when we are looking at best case scenario, for example, even if this commission was to do it by now, we are supposed to complete it by July this year, so that then you can use this outcome for the 2027 general election. So, but if you work backwards from July, we barely have 3 months for us to do it. So it's an impossibility, and we need to be honest with Kenyans, because that's what we saw, that oath to serve Kenyans without fear or any favor. So for us, there is that possibility. We can't preempt it. Kenyans, we are a very litigious society. So for us, we are planning on a scenario where we do the best we can under the circumstances, we continue with the activities, and then while focusing also on the general election. After that, then we will resume and proceed to complete maybe within a year or even later or two. Yeah.
Resources, do you have resources to do the first approach? And what is your target deficit in terms of resources needed for the general election?
For the general election, of course, that's a different matter. We're actually meeting with Parliament to discuss the same. But based on the requests we've placed already within the within Parliament, and we've been discussing, budget process is a process. So we have engaged. Sometimes we've been allocated, I think, 40 something. What is that? Around 41 million, and we have a deficit of 22 million from the 63 billion. Yes, I mean, we have been allocated 41 billion Kenya shillings, and we have a deficit of 22 from the overall budget we are anticipating to receive, that we're asking actually, about 63 billion for us to do the general election. For the boundary delimitation, of course, we have said we will be sharing a detailed work plan, timelines and methodologies, what we need to do, including stakeholder engagement, publications of reports. So until that time, that's when we will determine how much we will need and for what.
Na mtazamaji, huyo ni mwenyekiti wa Tume ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka nchini IEBC Erastus Othekon akitoa kauli au mipango ya tume hiyo mbele ya uchaguzi wa mwaka 2027. Waandishi wetu wa habari wazidi kufuatilia taarifa hiyo, watakuwa wanatujuza kwa mapana na marefu mwendo wa baadaye, lakini kwa sasa wacha tuangazie